On the hunt for comfortable, timeless Western boots? You already know the best place to shop for quality boots is at your local Tecova store. So stop by Tecovas Nashville, at the Mall at Green Hills, or on Broadway by Ryman Auditorium. That's right, you now have 2 locations to choose from. Grab a cold one as you shop and get fitted by a pro. Tecovas Nashville is at your service, and you can find your perfectly fitted dream boots with the help of their expert staff. Everyone will be asking where you got your sick new boots, but I won't be asking because I know they must be Tecovas. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all.
Today on CityCast Nashville, it's time for our Friday News Roundup. We always like to end the week with the biggest news stories in town and break them down for you with journalists, comedians, and anybody else we can convince to come on the show. Today, we're joined by Metro Council member at large Quin Evans Segall, along with our executive producer, Whitney Pastorek. Together, we check in on this week's election results, how we're feeling, and what the GOP victory means for Nashville. We're also celebrating the passing of Mayor O'Connell's transit referendum and discussing what's next. And is universal voucher legislation really back on the table? Well, we're going to talk about it. It's Friday, November 8th. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. First off, Quin, thank you for being here. A lot going on this week. How y'all feeling?
Yeah, so first, thanks for having me. Look, I'm in my 40s. I was here for 2016 in a very adult capacity at the time. So I am probably a little bit more sort of zen and unsurprised as to what happened, despite sort of polling errors and prediction errors. It's a funny world we live in, and funny things happen. I think a lot of different people are feeling a lot of different things. We know that almost 100,000 Nashvillians voted for Trump. The balance voted for Kamala Harris. So we're certainly a city with mixed vibes right now. I would say to those who were surprised, who are upset, who are shocked, and feeling all the things, it's okay to feel the things. Feel what you need to feel, do what you need to do to protect your mental, emotional health, and then get back in it, because it's going to be a long 4 years when it comes to making sure that we are taking care of and protecting all Nashvillians. It is a road that we are familiar with, and we've done it before, and we can certainly do it again.
Yeah, and I think I want to just echo what Quin said, which is I am dead inside. So I no longer have the capacity to feel tremendous heartbreak as far as federal politics are concerned. But what I can feel is heartbreak for my neighbors, and the way that my immigrant neighbors, my LGBTQ neighbors, my unhoused neighbors, how they are feeling and how it's potentially going to get much worse for them. And this is not based on, oh, it's liberal tears. This is based on things like Project 2025 and what it expressly says they wish to do to this nation. So I just really invite people to, even if you did vote for President Trump, there is probably something in Project 2025 that would seriously, materially affect your life, whether it's your Medicare and Social Security going away, impacts happening to the public schools that your children go to. And I think I would just really encourage everyone to take care of yourself, take care of other people, take care of your little corner of the world. But in terms of what's going to happen in Nashville, I honestly don't think we know yet what the federal policies are going to start to do. What we do know is that nothing changed about our state leadership.
Yeah, Whitney, so you bring up a couple interesting points. So first, for those Trump voters here in Nashville, right, I think we know preliminarily, we certainly don't have any data yet that I would want to rely on, but preliminarily, it suggests that overall the economy was the issue for Trump voters, not Project 2025, right? So if you're a Trump voter who voted for Trump because, the cost of milk is very high, it is really expensive when we go to the grocery store these days, and you're thinking about 2017, 2018, and how much milk was then, keep that in mind too for your neighbors, because it's incumbent on all of us to protect each other. And then at the state level, I would actually classify what happened in Tennessee as a massive victory. What we saw overall in the country was early data is suggesting that in states that were not swing states, Trump got almost 4% more of the vote than he got in the last cycle. In states that were swing states, we're seeing that that was under 2%. We put a lot of work into Tennessee to try and flip some seats. We didn't quite get there, but what we did is we held on to every seat that we had. And that is a massive, massive victory in light of sort of the losses that Democrats saw nationwide. So while nothing has changed here, I would say that's actually a really good sign for our future when it comes to having a more balanced government, right? That sort of listens to everybody and efforts to make it more balanced, right? What we're doing is working. It's just that the environment was very, very, very challenging.
It's like I always say in Vegas, a push is a win. Marie, how are you feeling? What's your vibe check? You have a comedy show tonight that you've got to go do.
That is true. I'm headlining the comedy night at the Blue Room, which is Jack White's music venue attached to Third Man Records. So please come out if you want some laughs. But yes, when I first found out the election results, I immediately wanted to pull out, to be honest. Like, I just didn't know what I was going to say. I had maybe thought the election was going to go a different way, so I had really curated my 25-minute set a little differently. But you know what? I kind of had to talk myself in the mirror and say, come on, Marie, you are meant to bring laughter and joy. I have been doing comedy for the past 15 years. It is one of my absolute favorite things to do. And so I've rewritten my set, and I'm really excited to hopefully, again, bring people together no matter what and just have a good time. So as long as we have freedom of speech, we got to just keep doing that. So those are my thoughts.
Those are good thoughts.
Those are great. And I think also, not to opine too much without any data, and it is certainly way too soon, but I think we can probably say with confidence that comedy won over a lot of people to the right.
Oh, yeah.
And using comedy to sort of bring people back to the middle is going to be really critical over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Quin, how do we as a city, you just mentioned bringing people together, how do we as a city ensure that we are providing opportunities for everyone, regardless of who they voted for in the next 4 years?
Oh, I mean, you have really hit on my favorite topic, because I think the loss of our third spaces, the loss of our togetherness has really been one of the main factors in driving us all apart, right? When I was growing up, we went to church and my parents went to the office, and, there were neighborhood picnics and all these things that brought people together regardless of their political beliefs. We were all sort of going into these spaces. Public schools were very different back then too. So we were still under busing. So we were going in and out of different neighborhoods back then and really getting to know people on a different level, working together as a city to provide those third spaces at low and no cost is really critical. Whether it's a neighborhood coffee shop where you might have to buy a coffee to be there, or a neighborhood park that's free to be there, and community event at your local elementary school, really just being together provides those bonds that then when we need to rely on each other, we can pull on.
I just got breakfast tacos from Lady Bird Taco, and there was a group of parents from Inglewood, maybe like 15 of them, because I had run into another friend, and she was like, oh, I'm here with the parent group. We're chatting and getting together and making, plans. And that was really cool to see. It was very loud, and I was like, what's going on? And it was these moms. Yeah, these moms, like, I hope that we see more of those community gatherings in all different spaces. On to something that actually is really exciting. The transit referendum passed.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. See, and it was something good that we did for ourselves that is hyper local, right? Mm-hmm. It is only going to impact those of us who live or work or visit here. Hopefully it will have a trickle out effect to our neighboring counties, where maybe now people will have park and rides that they can park their car out there and then get on a bus to come in here. But what a delightful example of why focusing on local stuff can make your world a much better place. Quin, Were you surprised that it passed?
No, I was not surprised that it passed. I
Look
mean,
at that optimism. I love that.
I'm a deeply optimistic person. I'm also like a little bit of a realist. But what I knew very early on, just really from the campaign and before the campaign and talking to people, and I don't mean the transit campaign, I mean mine a year ago, is we are really hungry in Nashville for better traffic options, better housing options, just again, getting to these back to basics things. And it was a very simple plan that was easily digestible. There wasn't a lot in it to say, what are we doing here? I don't understand this. How is this going to affect my daily commute, right? It's very simple. We're running more buses. We're building sidewalks. We are fixing the stoplights, right? This is how it affects your daily commute. And so by presenting it and working on it in a way that made it very digestible, people could see how it was going to meet their needs. And we knew that people really wanted something to meet their needs. I had the joy of working the poll with the mayor at the very end of the day at my local polling place. Yes, it was lovely. So we were standing outside of Belmont University. It's kind of a chaotic poll because there's also like a Chick-fil-A right there and student center. It's so you're just like, are you voting? Are you eating? Chicken vote. We don't know.
And Nashville.
So, it is very Nashville. But what was really remarkable is the number of people who weren't voting, who stopped the mayor, who had never met him before, just on the sidewalk, right? So when we talk about third spaces, when we talk about connectivity, we're about to build 86 miles of sidewalks that we couldn't afford to build. All these people stopping the mayor on the sidewalk that they're using to say, thank you for what you are doing. We really need this in the city right now. And so that was just really joyful. If I had any lingering doubts, that really resolved it. Because, these are college kids, right? They may not be from here, and they're still very excited and took the time to know who our mayor is, which, for those of you who know, nobody votes in local elections. People do, but like very few people. And so they knew who he was. They knew what he was doing. They knew it was happening. And that was just such a really good, heartening sign for our city.
Well, I do want to remind people, for all our excitement, this is a 15-year plan,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is no such thing as a magic wand that's going to get waved and all of a sudden, poof, the traffic's gone. But Mayor O'Connell has telegraphed this week that they're already in progress working on some of this stuff. They are adding an office in the mayor's office, a chief program officer for Choose How You Move. See there, I had to say it again. I know I thought I was never going to have to say it again, but I did. And that person will start overseeing implementation. The sales tax bump will go into effect in February, and Metro will start receiving those dollars in April. And that means within the next year, some sidewalks and signals will start to appear in the night. Most likely not the sidewalks. You'll see those going in, but maybe you'll wake up one morning and that light that just sits there red for 5 minutes will not do that anymore.
I'm hoping my left turn on Dickerson is just going to be a little bit slightly longer, actually, because it's 3 seconds long. It's awful. So I'm very hopeful for that.
Dickerson's going to get a lot, honestly. Like, Marie, you're in a prime location.
Well, good, because it is so dangerous over here for pedestrians. And so I'm really looking forward to keeping my neighbors more safe because it's been deadly.
Yeah, it has been deadly. It's going to get a lot of upgrades. In the interim, just plug for Hub Nashville, put in that intersection into Hub, tell them the light is not holding long enough, and somebody can probably manually adjust it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so helpful. We are actually, next week, we're going to be talking with Erin Williams, who is the director of Hub Nashville. And we're going to learn all about ways people can use Hub Nashville right now to improve their lives. But also, I think, talk about how services like that can continue to help bring the city together, improve lives for people on a granular level.
It's so incredibly helpful. And as a citizen who, might think, well, what is my government doing for me? What am I getting out of the tax dollars I'm spending? If you put in a pothole that you are crossing every day that is driving you crazy, you put it in a Hub. Right now, we're doing 1, 2, 3 day turnarounds on that. Within a couple of days, that pothole is gone. It's like, government does work, right?
That's
we
amazing.
can do these like really basic things that make our lives better.
Well, and I love that you just told Marie to put in her traffic signal. Like, I don't think many of us ever considered that we could actually have an opinion on things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But while they're upgrading these traffic signals, Marie, you've got a bad one. Tell somebody.
Yes, I'm downloading the app right now.
Yeah.
You're not focused solely on our podcast?
Oh, I'm listening. I'm multi-talented.
Whitney, I love that phrase. Like, just tell somebody, right? Like,
Right.
Nashville has a lot of amazing things about us that make us unique, but we are unique in size, and that's kind of cool. And it's also really challenging as a government to say, well, how am I going to know about all the potholes in all 527 square miles of this city? Well, we know because we have Hub, and we're all sort of in it together. Nashville's always been sort of a little d democratic city, right? We have all these boards and commissions. We have this massive council. We are really a citizen-led government here, and that is, shown in Hub Nashville and how we just tell somebody and we get it fixed and done.
Wow. I didn't expect this episode to actually feel as uplifting as it's going today. So thank you, Quin. Why don't we take a quick break? And when we come back, maybe we remove the hug? I don't know. We're going to talk about the vouchers.
Remove the hug.
Remove the hug. Where's that weighted blanket?
Speaking of the state legislature and how nothing has changed, although a push is a win, nothing has changed. The first bill filed for the 2025 legislative session of the Tennessee General Assembly comes pretty much directly from Republican Governor Bill Lee, who has brought back his universal school voucher plans. Dun, 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 dun. This allows tax dollars to be routed out of public schools to pay for tuition for private and charter schools. The bill is pretty much identical to the one that failed last year. One of our Nashville-based State House representatives, John Ray Clemens, called it, quote, same scam, different language in the Nashville scene. And it's true that parents and school districts statewide very vocally rejected last year's attempt at this, which is why it failed. Quin, you're a parent. You also obviously represent parents all across the city. What have you heard from people on this? Do you think anyone's opinion has magically changed from last year?
Do I think anybody's opinion has magically changed? I think that's a really great question. I don't think on the parent front, the school board front, the political front, I think there were one or two Republican House or Senate members who lost in primaries to pro-voucher candidates. So there may be a little bit of a shift on the Hill on that. I think this is such a fascinating issue. Just as a total aside, I'm a nonpartisan politician. I consider myself a Democrat, but there are also a lot of issues on the municipal level that just truly are nonpartisan. Housing policy is a great one, right? There are different reasons why different parties support different housing policy. This one, I think, is the kind of equivalent of that on the state level. It really sort of defies party lines, particularly on the right, but occasionally on the left as well. And I would assume that the governor has more of a plan for how to get this through if he's bringing it back again. But certainly we saw that there was massive bipartisan movement last term to defeat this. So I'm just really looking forward as a total political dork and junkie to watching how this unfolds, right? This is not where I have to go to work every day, but it's certainly something I'm watching, and I think will be really interesting to see if anything has changed.
Right. And I mean, lawmakers possibly shifting farther to the right on this issue is one thing, but in terms of public sentiment, I mean, we just saw on Tuesday night that voters in Kentucky had a ballot initiative to allow vouchers. Essentially, it was to allow, tax dollars to go to private and charter schools. And they rejected that hard. It was 65-35. Kentucky was like, nope. And that was very clearly a bipartisan vote based on the demographics in Kentucky. So I can't imagine that Tennessee all of a sudden is like, no, it's cool.
You bring up such a good point, right? Kentucky, a lot of people think we should be just like Kentucky or North Carolina, right? Kentucky is like a southern version of the Midwest, and we're like a Midwestern version of the South. So there are some weird little differences, but we're having lived in both. I mean, we're not that different. And in particular, when it comes to schools, Kentucky and Tennessee are pretty similar, right? We have some big cities where there is a lot of school choice. We have a lot of school choice in Nashville. We already have some of the things that they don't have in the rest of the state when it comes to sort of vouchers or reimbursements, that sort of school choice. The quantity of charter schools is very different in Nashville and Shelby County as well. So our cities, right, already have a lot of school choice for people. Our rural areas don't. Fundamentally, our rural areas are deeply, deeply reliant on the public school system and the funding that goes to those systems, which is why it makes for such a weird sort of mashup of where everybody is. And I'm really curious to see if the rural systems continue that push against sort of the depletion of their funds that we saw last time.
And to explain exactly how that works, if you only have public schools in your county, in your area, and the state is pulling thousands of dollars out of those school districts to give to kids in other places to go to private schools, that doesn't really help you. It doesn't really help you to get $7,000 for your kid to go to a private or a charter school that probably is not located anywhere close to your house. And B, that's just less teacher pay, fewer school improvements. I think that's the argument, as Quin was saying, for folks in some of those rural counties, kind of not dissimilar to what's happened with rural hospitals over the years closing, right? That this sort of, depending on where people move the money, people in different places lose services. And it is usually not the people in the urban areas who lose choice. It's the people living in smaller, more rural places.
What my brain can't compute about this whole voucher system is that, like, Jack Johnson was quoted in the Nashville scene saying, these kids are trapped in these failing schools. So it's, let's give them an alternative. But like, if you're actually saying these schools are failing, what not to do is take more money away from these failing schools. It's so simple. And I'm not a parent, so I haven't been following the vouchers as closely. But like, even just reading that, I like shut down. I do not understand what is happening.
It's like, do not compute.
Cannot compute, shutting down.
And can someone direct me to the private school that costs $7,000 a year?
Yeah, I was going to ask, Harpeth Hall, I don't know how much these private schools are nowadays, but.
I mean, I do. Right. So I went to Metro Public Schools. I also went to private schools. My two oldest kids are in private schools. They do not cost $7,000. It's difficult even to get a scholarship for your kid that lowers the cost to $7,000. So I think there was a study last year that came out, and I'm trying to think who did that study, that just showed the schools that actually fall into that bucket. And it's very, very limited. And going back to this, do not compute thing, I actually think one of the really interesting things to watch on this bill is I believe there is a provision to give teachers a $2,000 one-time pay. I suspect that is happening to try and get teachers on board with this. But again, to your point, they're also saying, hey, teacher, your school is failing. And so, look, I'm not a teacher. I'm not an educator. I don't live in a rural county. I don't know how, $2,000 versus having to accept that somebody has told me I'm failing. I don't know how those balance out, right? To folks, but I think that'll be really interesting to watch.
I agree. And I'm glad you did point out that we do currently have school choice here in Nashville. We and Memphis were asked to accept the pilot program for all of this. And, we'll probably talk to some people down the line here to see how that's been going for them and their kids. We'll talk to some educators, and we'll continue to follow the story. Marie, do you want to take us out with one last piece of good news, though? Potential good news?
Well, yes. On the flip side, Democratic State Representative Aftyn Behn has just filed her first piece of legislation for 2025, a bill to repeal the state's 4% grocery tax.
Ooh.
How do we think Nashvillians will respond to that?
I mean,
I positively, right? I mean, sadly, Nashvillians, are not the answer. It drives me nuts. The whole state calls the capital Nashville, and I'm like, but they're different. They're different. We're different.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think Nashvillians understand we shouldn't be taxing something that is so critical to everybody's life, that we're already providing benefits just for people to have, right? There are all kinds of theoretical arguments. And even if you can't get behind those, then you may be somebody who just doesn't like taxes generally. So, you can get behind it then too, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, let's bring people together. Let's talk about, how we all feel and where we can come together. Whether that goes anywhere with the state, I think it's a real question. I think the state, I don't know where the state budget is right now, but I know in years past, there have been real questions about that. And we'll just have to see if that gains any traction. Certainly, we've had holidays from it in the past. And look, a gallon of milk is expensive in Nashville. A gallon of milk is expensive in Smith County, in Lake County, right? We're all sort of facing these increased costs, and it is hitting folks with limited budgets harder and harder and harder.
The real question here is, will this bill even make it out of committee? And I don't know. I hope so, because it really would positively benefit people. And especially since we just tacked on a little teeny extra sales tax to pay for our transit referendum, it would be great to do a plus 0.5 minus 4 on some of this stuff. But who knows?
Well, Quin, thank you again. It was such a pleasure to vote for you. And now to be here talking to you is a little bit of a dream come true. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for voting for me.
Yes, of course.
Like a delightful piece of information on this otherwise trying week.
Nonpartisan podcast.
Quin is a nonpartisan elected official. That's why we've invited her on our nonpartisan podcast.
Love it. Well, you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. Our executive producer is Whitney Pastorek. Our producer this week is Zoe Colkin. Our Hey Nashville newsletter editor is Margaret Kingsbury, and our theme music is by Prof Jenkins. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!